Hi, James Himm Mitchell here, and in this video, I'm continuing my series on Kathy's Grand Tableau, this time focusing on another portrait spread, but using a topic card, so stay tuned. And here we are with the cards on the table, and the deck that I'm using for this series has been the Lenormand, and so this is the Grand Tableau that we have been using for this series. This is the tableau that was used at the time that my friend Kathy had asked about her situation with her husband Dave and the state of their marriage, and as well as considering the question of, depending on how things either work or don't work out with Dave, where was she going, in terms of direction, what was going to be lying ahead for her, that kind of energy. And so in the previous video, we looked at things from the card surrounding Kathy, and so Kathy is the woman or the lady card here, and we did what's called the portrait spread, which means that we looked at the 8 cards surrounding her. And I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to be looking at another portrait, but instead of using the significator card, I'm going to look at it from the perspective of using a topic card. And for this video, we're going to be looking at it from the standpoint of the ring, which happens to be interesting if you look at the layout. Here we have Kathy's card, the lady card, and then in between her card and the ring card, which is her topic, is that we have the gentleman, which is representing Dave, her husband. And so we'll be looking at that, but we'll be looking at the 8 cards surrounding this card. And the reason why I'm doing this is, while it's good to look at the card surrounding the significator in terms of giving the person more in depth about where they are in terms of the situation, it can also be interesting and enlightening to look at it from the perspective of the topic or the situation that they're looking at. So we'll be doing the same thing we did with Kathy's portrait, only we'll be doing it with the ring. So I'm going to take a moment and readjust the camera, so this way we can focus on the 9 cards that are surrounding, or the 8 cards rather, that are surrounding the ring. It would be 9 cards including the ring. So we'll get right to that. So I've taken the liberty of removing all the cards around these 9 cards so we can get a close-up of them. So they've been readjusted. And so for the 9 card reading that we're looking at, remember that the topic card is in the center, so that's the ring. And surrounding it we have bear, clouds, fox, gentleman, fish, crossroads, clover, and letter. So interesting, the first thing that I notice is that Dave here, which is the gentleman, is facing the ring, but he's also in the column that represents the past. So this is how I look at the 9 card when I do it. The first column here on the left is the past, this is the present, and then this last column here is the future. So we'll be taking a look at it from that perspective. So that already is putting Dave in the past when you look at it from that regard in terms of the marriage, and that's falling in line with the situation because Dave came to Kathy one day and just told her that he needed to leave the marriage. So that, again, you want to look, or at least I do, I tend to look for repeating messages just in different configurations or permutations within the tableau. So this is just, again, restating what we already know to be true in the situation. So there's that aspect of it. The most telling thing here in this 9 cards is that we have the appearance of the clouds. And so the clouds is the most challenging card in the deck, according to some people. So the nearer the clouds are to the significator or the topic, so we have a significator card here, so clouds is touching Dave, but we also have it right above the ring. So this lets us know, again, about the uncertainty, because clouds represents confusion, uncertainty, doubt about the marriage, because it is directly above it. So very interesting how that has played into that. We also have the appearance of another challenging card. We have the Fox, so the Fox can be a challenging card. And so that is what I'm seeing in the moment, that it just kind of just leaped out at me. If we go with the ID here, a lot of the energy here, since Dave is in the picture, so to speak, since Dave is in the picture here, it kind of puts a lot of the emphasis possibly on Dave, or at least how Dave is viewing the marriage, or what his role is going to be in it from this point on, because remember now, this is about looking at the marriage. So since his card is here, the Lenormand may be putting a lot of the emphasis on Dave here. And so with that, I notice that we have two money cards here. We have the Bear, and depending on what school of thought you come from with the Bear card, one of the meanings for Bear for me can be finances. My actual finance card or money card is actually the Fish, which is also here. So there may be some issues pertaining to money or finances or resources within the marriage, or that are going to impact the marriage going forward. So that's going to play into it, resources and money. So let's take a look at this much more closely. So here we have, again, the first card being Bear. So when I do a 9 card, is I look to see what the middle card is, and we have already chosen it because it represents a topic. But then the first card represents what's initiating the situation, or what I call the trigger point is, that kind of energy. And so Bear being the first card, besides being about resources and finances, I tend to look at Bear as something having to do with strength, something having to do with power. It can represent like control, being an authority. I call it the boss card. So here we have a situation about, like, you know, who's in charge, who's got the power. It could be a power issue or power play going on within the dynamics of the marriage. So that could be some concern. Again, with the idea here, could be about the financial resources, about going forward, that kind of energy. But I'm tending to look at it from the perspective of, like, you know, maybe a control issue, power issue, something of that nature. So I'm seeing that as the trigger. If we look at the column, we have Bear, Gentleman, and Crossroads. And so if you remember, this was actually the future column in the portrait spread that I did for Kathy's portrait. So here we have that energy carrying over here into the marriage. So Bear, again, represents power, strength, authority, and I call it being the boss. But with Dave here right underneath it, it could be suggesting here that, you know, the idea here that in the past, Dave, in terms of how he viewed the marriage, Dave maybe felt like maybe it was too much, because I'd sometimes see the Bear as something that's overbearing, something that's a burden, something that has just become too much. And here we could look at it as possibly the Lenormand is suggesting that Dave is the heavy here. You know, and the heavy meaning like he's the one who kind of created the situation when he went to Kathy and said he was leaving the marriage. So it made Dave the heavy. So I'm seeing that. And it could also be in terms of the marriage, Dave has on his mind about how, you know, he's going to manage, going with the idea here that the Bear can be somebody who's a manager, how he's going to manage, maybe for himself, or how he's going to manage the resources, you know, going forward. So I'm seeing that. And then now that I mentioned going forward, we have the Crossroads at the bottom. Crossroads can represent choices, options, alternatives. I tend to look at it too as a card that can represent direction and departure. So here, Gentleman and the Crossroads is actually talking about Dave making the choice to depart the marriage. Remember, keeping with the idea here that the focus is on the marriage, Dave made the choice to leave the marriage. And so that's what these two cards are suggesting right here. So I find that very, again, very relevant. It's restating the obvious. It's restating what we already know to be true about the situation. So there's that. Moving into the next column, which is what's going on at the time we did the reading for Kathy, we have Clouds, we have Ring, and we have Clover. So here, with Clouds and Ring again, at the time we did the reading, there was uncertainty about the marriage, so that makes perfect sense if we look at that as a combination. And going with that even one step further, if we look at the inset of the clouds, we have the King of Clubs, and so that again can represent a man. So here it says that there is uncertainty about the marriage, but it could also be uncertainty about the man and the marriage, because Kathy wasn't sure at the time whether Dave was going to stay or whether Dave was going to leave. They weren't sure about the actual status, and he left in the moment, but she was unsure about the future of the marriage. But it's like, again, it's another way of the Lenormand putting the emphasis on Dave here, because the King of Clubs is the inset there. So then we have ring and clover, and so that could just represent a commitment that is short term or brief, because I tend to look at clover as something that's small, something that's brief, something that is short term. So I'm seeing that. And so if we read the line here, it could be, the uncertainty about the marriage is brief, which means that at the time there was this brief period of uncertainty about how things were going to turn out. Or it could be that if we go with ring for me can sometimes represent something that is recurring. So it could be like there's this recurring sense of uncertainty about the marriage that's brief. So the Lenormand could be saying like this. It could be like Dave is the one who's confused. He's not sure what he really wants. He may think that he wants his sense of independence, but maybe when they're having conversations about it, he comes across as being not sure, which leaves Kathy not sure. And so it could be like they're continuing to have these recurring cycles where no one's really sure about it, but those cycles, when they happen, are brief. So it could be like, those moments when you have like nagging periodic doubts, they come in cycles, they come and then they leave, just like clouds. Clouds come in and then they leave. So it could be that kind of energy. But again, that kind of falls in line with when Kathy first had this reading done. Great deal of uncertainty about the state of the marriage and also about the future of it. So that makes perfect sense there. Moving over to the next column, we have fox, we have fish, we have letter. So the interesting thing here about fox for me can represent the idea here about, employment, job, and that would make sense with bear. So here we have a card about resources, and then we have a card here about job and employment. And interestingly enough, we have the gentleman who is knighting fox. So one thing about Dave that I know from Kathy is that Dave is self-employed. So not only is this about job and employment, this can be about self-employment. So I'm seeing that, and since Dave's card is knighting the fox card, that would make sense. It's another way of describing Dave. It's about he's self-employed. Could also be in terms of the marriage, and the bear aspect about being the heavy and feeling like it's too much. As a result of that, Dave sought his independence, because I tend to look at fox as independence, but then it begs the question, what is he going to do about surviving in the future, and I'm touching on this now, but with clouds touching it, that could be uncertain. So it could be there's uncertainty about his self-employment, and there's also uncertainty about how is he going to maybe survive on his own. He may want the sense of independence, but he's not sure about how he's going to go about doing that. So I'm seeing that as a possibility with fox there. And then right below it is fish, and so fish is the money card, but it also, with the King of Diamonds as the inset, can represent an entrepreneur. So we have two cards in a way that are reinforcing Dave here and what he does professionally. So, but it could also too be like there may be some financial issues or concerns in the future. So I'm seeing that as a possibility. It could be like, while Dave may be self-employed, if he chooses to leave and he has other financial obligations or responsibilities, let's say, it could be that he may have to seek maybe part-time employment or some other job in order to make enough money. And it could be, maybe even to make enough money to live on his own. So that could be a possibility there. And then the letter is a card that can represent news or messages. Usually it's in written form, so I'm seeing this as maybe paperwork, documentation, something of that nature. So if we look at fish and letter, it's a combination. Here we have like financial paperwork or financial documentation. So it could be, a financial statement, a financial invoice. If we go with the idea here that fish is money and letter is paper, then it could be like a check. Something having to do with something of a financial component or financial nature is what I'm seeing with that. So again, it's just reinforcing again here that there may be some financial obligations or financial commitments that are still going to be in play, whether Dave chooses to stay in the relationship or chooses to leave it. Like there may be some other things in place that can't be undone just because their marital status may change. So I'm seeing that. The next thing I could do is we could look at the corners. So we have bear and letter as one pairing, one corner. So for me, I'm looking this as, the idea here about resources, but again, going with the idea about being the boss, and letter being news or messages or paperwork. It could be something having to do with ownership, and that would make sense with the idea here that Dave is self-employed and an entrepreneur. So there may be some paperwork about ownership of the business, or having to do with resources that are tied to that. So I'm seeing that as a possibility. And then here, the other corner, we have Fox and Crossroads. So this could be like job and employment options, or approaching what we're going to do about job and employment. It could also be about a strategy, because I tend to look at Fox as a strategy. So it could be, being strategic, with choices or options, saying, okay, if I'm going to move in this direction, this is how I need to go about it. If I'm going to go down this road or this path, this is how I need to go about it. Fox is saying this is a time to be clever, because this card can be clever. So it's about being clever or, smart with your choices and decisions moving forward. So I'm seeing that as a possibility here. Then next thing we can do is we could look at the rows. So the top row, we have bear, clouds, and fox. So here we have with bear and clouds, we could have like resources are uncertain, which we kind of already touched on. With clouds and fox, we can have uncertainty about job, employment, or self-employment. And with this, I'm seeing this too, because in the challenging sense, Fox can be a card that can represent, being lied to, being cheated on, being taken advantage of, being manipulated. And I already touched on the fact that gentleman knights Fox. So here we have uncertainty about whether the man, has maybe lied, or, if we're unsure about whether the man has cheated. And that's kind of showed up in other places throughout this series. So here again, the Lenormand is reinforcing or restating that possibility. So there's that I'm seeing. So that's the row here. So it could just be, again, clouds being in between the bear and the fox, could just be uncertainty about resources pertaining to either the job, the employment, or even the resources to survive on one's own. And that could be for both of them, if they are really having a lot of financial concerns that are framing their marriage or are playing a part in it, then it could be like they each may need to look at how are they going to manage on their own from a financial standpoint. So that's the top row. The next row would be gentleman, ring, and fish. And I'm seeing that in the moment as saying the man is facing a commitment, a promise, or an agreement that has to do with money. So, and that could be, again, stating like even if he leaves, there may be some sort of financial arrangement, financial commitment, financial agreement between him and Kathy that is still going to be in play once he leaves. So there's that I'm seeing in the moment with that. And then the bottom row, we have crossroads, we have clover, and we have letter. So here with crossroads and clover, we have maybe some options that are short term, or options for the short term. So if he left, it could have been saying, well, I need to leave and then we'll explore what we're going to do down the line. So that could just have been a short-term choice or a short-term option, and they need to be considering, going strategic here, what they're going to do long-term. But that maybe was something that he did in the moment and was brief. You know, maybe it wasn't really thought out. And it could also be here the choice to be carefree, or, you know, because I sometimes see Clover as being carefree, being spontaneous, so maybe it was a spontaneous choice or decision. Something, again, pointing to it wasn't well thought out. Going with clouds, being unsure and uncertain. It wasn't thought out. It was kind of maybe in the moment kind of thing and didn't think it through. So there's that. Then we have Clover and letter. So that could be, again, going with maybe this financial agreement or financial arrangement, or, you know, this energy here. It could be, you know, maybe an opportunity to get something in writing, you know, to look at that, because, again, letter is about documents, paperwork, things being written. So there's that I'm seeing. And it could be like even like a promissory note. If we go with ring being about promises, then since ring is touching letter, it could be like a promissory note. But whatever the arrangement is, if it's verbal, it could be in Kathy's best interest to make sure that they get that in writing, you know, so this way she's covered, you know, and it would kind of get him to honor his word or keep his commitment if there is some sort of written documentation stating that. So I'm seeing that. And then the last thing we can do is we can go around and do the diamond. So we have clouds, gentleman, Clover, fish, and going back to clouds. So it could be like the possibility here would be, if you read it all as a summation, it could be maybe doubt or uncertainty about the man, because he's facing a, you know, a risk or a gamble. You know, he may see it as an opportunity, but from Kathy's perspective, it could be a risk or a gamble that only deepens this level of uncertainty she has about the marriage. So that's how I would read the diamond. And so that is going to bring this 9-card reading to a close. And so in the next video, we'll be taking a deeper look at this by doing what I call counting round and doing a line of 5. And as I close out this reading, I just want to say that I hope that you found this process, from looking at it from the standpoint of a topic card rather than a significator, I hope you found that helpful. I hope you found it informative. Those of you who have been following my videos in terms of using some of the information that I share in your own study of the cards, I hope you found it informative. If you're coming to this series from the standpoint of like looking at how I read the cards in context to a love, romance, relationship question or perspective, I hope you found it informative from that angle. So again, I'm James Himm Mitchell. I'm signing off, and I want to thank you for sharing space with me in this video. And as I sign off, I want to wish you a wonderful day, and until we get together in the next video, take care.